Hi Natasha, how you doing?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Insta Live. It's our first
Yeah,
one, so we are a little nervous. Yeah,
very.
yes.
Yeah, hi
So,
everyone.
but yeah, as Rutwa just introduced the museum and Noah and I have known each other now for as long as Noah has been associated with the museum, conducting heritage walks and also been part of our restoration of the Chapel of the Weeping Cross. For most of y'all who have been in Goa and know Old Goa, I'm sure you'll have come and seen the museum and the Holy Hill. That's what we'll be talking about today. But for those who have not, y'all should come when things start to improve a little. Just to give you all a little bit of a background about the Museum of Christian Art, it is a small museum, but with a very, very unique collection of Christian art objects from the 16th century onwards. And we have been in existence for the last 28 years. We've been closed for the last 2.5 years almost because we have been upgrading the museum to, come up to international standards. We were just about to inaugurate on the 30th of March. However, due to the pandemic, we had to close, change of plans, and now, well, we'll just have to wait for a little longer. And I think all of you all are as anxious as we are to reopen and to welcome you all into the museum. But to stay alive and to stay active on social media, I know we've taken our time, but here we are with our first Insta Live. And we thought we could touch on this topic of adaptive reuse of heritage structures. So over to you, Noah, who has done so many heritage walks of the Holy Hill, some with me, some by yourself, and you've really been, the feedback that we've got on all the walks have been fantastic. So if you can just tell, our friends here on Instagram a little more about the Holy Hill, the monuments that we have here on the Holy Hill in Old Goa.
Yeah, welcome friends, well-wishers, and my students. I can see a couple of students here who are also part, and it's great. Yeah, and I think this has been quite a journey, and I think like as Natasha said, I think these walks have been quite especially Holy Hill has been quite insightful in my journey as an architect, and then my venture into very instrumental actually in me venturing into conservation, and that was a very important part. The Holy Hill and in its monuments have been very much a part of my journey in my life so far, and I love to share that part with everybody, through the walks. Okay, so friends who have joined, the Holy Hill is in fact one of the very integral parts of the 16th century city of Old Goa, and it is one of the places that has the largest concentration of monastic churches and convents in the city of Goa and Old Goa, and you can see that this area I think is a very good example of how these convents and churches have been continuing in terms of their use through new uses that have been that they have been put to beyond their the actual use. Okay, so that's the reason we thought of incorporating this as a very interesting discussion. Okay, so the earliest monument, the earliest structure you see in the Holy Hill is the Our Lady of Rosary Church, which is one of the first parish churches in Old Goa. It was built by the crew and captains of the fleet of Admiral Alphonse Albuquerque. So it is one of the first parish churches that was built in Goa. And the other structure was built. This structure was built in 1543, and later you have the Saint Anthony's Chapel, the Royal Chapel of Saint Anthony, dedicated to the national saint of Portugal, which is a very interesting structure. It has this very blue interiors, very interesting. Then we have the Augustinian convent, which was built in the early 17th century, which was followed by the construction of the Santa Monica convent, which is the first built in Asia. It is one of the first nunneries built in Asia. And in this Convent of Santa Monica, we have the Museum of Christian Art, among other functions that Natasha will tell us later. Okay, and finally we have the Convent of Saint John of God, which was a hospital for the poor. So we have very interesting, diverse, original functions happening. And today, many of these functions have changed. And we will see through this discussion. We'll see how these functions have been really beneficial to the life and continued existence and of this beautiful city of Old Goa, heritage city of Old Goa. Yeah.
Okay, so like Noah has already introduced all of us to these monuments on the Holy Hill, from where I come from at MoCA, yeah. So the Museum of Christian Art, or MoCA as we call it, is located within the Convent of Santa Monica. Now, primarily this was a convent for cloistered nuns. And then in 1961 or 1962, post-liberation, what we have is that all these monuments were handed back to the Archdiocese of Goa, and the use of these buildings changed a little bit. So we have the Institute Mater Dei, which is using the Convent of Santa Monica for educational purposes. So it's a center for education for nuns who come from all over India, and they come here to do their graduation and other courses, master's courses in theology and philosophy. So the convent continues to be used, but not in its primary function, but as an educational institution, today. And the Museum of Christian Art is located within one part of the church, which was earlier the choir area for the cloistered nuns. So the use has changed from it being a choir area of a church to now a museum. So this is one example of adaptive reuse that we see here. But I'll hand over a little later for Noah to just explain to all of us what adaptive reuse is. Then we have the Convent of Saint John of God, which is no longer used. It is used today as a home for senior citizens. Yeah, and we have the ruins of St. Augustine's, which is like an open museum where you have a lot of visitors coming, walking in and looking at the ruins and trying and understanding a lot of the history of the place. You have the Chapel of St. Anthony, which again today is run as a novitiate for nuns. So the primary functions of some continue to remain, whereas in some cases, some buildings have been put to use. The functionality has changed a little bit. So Noah, over to you to explain to us all about what exactly is adaptive reuse.
Yeah, so adaptive reuse is a very interesting process in heritage conservation, where and a historic building or a site, maybe over the years has, gotten into sort of a disuse, or maybe this original inhabitants are not there, in those structures, like for example, in Old Goa we had an religious expulsion happening in the late 18th century and early 1835. That is like so we have that kind of mid 17th century kind of a religious expulsion happening, and a lot of these monuments were abandoned, and as you said, the archdiocese took over these monuments, and it's also very very crucial for us to know that a lot of these monuments, when the archdiocese took over them, they were in disrepair, and this whole process of adaptive reuse seeks to breathe new life into these monuments by putting them to a use that is other than its original use, so it's like a new use that is totally different from what it was designed for, so that essentially is the process of adaptive reuse. And it is very interesting to also to note that this process of adaptive reuse is a very sustainable one, in a sense that where it sort of looks at what the existing building stock is within a historic a city, site, or precinct, and you can put them to these new uses, and where you continue the life of this building, you continue the stories, and you take them to the next generation. You pass on this building as a repository of knowledge to the next generation. And through that new use, you do this, and which is a very interesting sort of process, and it has its own sort of very interesting challenges and
Okay.
benefits also. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we talk of benefits, Noah, so
Yeah.
like we explain what adaptive reuse is, and when we talk of benefits, really as a conservation architect, if you can tell us what are the benefits for, of adaptive reuse. I mean, for me, from the point of view of being at MoCA, I can see a lot of benefits for the building, for the museum. But if you can tell us from, from your perspective, how do you think adaptive reuse is beneficial for these heritage buildings?
Yeah, so these heritage buildings, when they were built, they were built in a very very special kind of an architectural style of its time, and that as sort of a value that it gives a lot of value to our present day needs and uses, in terms of its aesthetics, maybe, in terms of the way it passes down the history, the historic sort of value that it gives us. And also sometimes in the economic sense, we get a lot of benefit in that sense. The economy, we're able to, like, save a lot of money in terms of construction of a new building, by just adapting that building to a new use. And also in the terms of, a lot of educational uses also are there. And there are some that I'm sure you are more familiar with, and you could share with our viewers, I think.
Like, for example, when the museum was moved here from the seminary of Rush Hall, and it came to be located within Santa Monica, I think, it brought life to the building. People who walk into this space, yes, they are coming in to look at the art objects that the museum houses, but it's also the building that adds value to this whole museum experience. The history that it tells you, the stories. So, this was Asia's largest and first convent that was built for nuns. So the stories that you encounter when you enter this space, the aesthetics of the way it was built. So there are so many benefits that are combined. One is that the building continues to live because you are looking after it, you're using it. So there is that huge benefit. Otherwise, you wouldn't have so many as many monuments that we see standing on the holy hill today. Maybe if we had not stepped the custodians had not stepped in and put them into adaptive reuse, maybe we would not have seen as many monuments standing today. So adaptive reuse is, I think, beneficial from that point of view. And for us, from the perspective of the museum, yes, it gives you a whole enriching experience of, and the holy hill also gets
I can't hear you.
yeah, you
Is
can't.
that
All right. These are the challenges that we talk about in real life.
Anyway,
Okay.
sorry about
So
that.
you can hear me
Yeah,
clearly, right?
you clearly. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So
So getting back to the benefits of
yeah,
adaptive reuse and the challenges that we encounter also while trying to adapt these buildings to a new use, to a use that it was not meant for originally. So if you
yeah.
can share some of the situations that you've been through whenever you've been engaged in any of such situations.
Yeah, so I think the it's the challenge, like the whole challenge is for us to like, how do we include all the various kind of uses that this building could provide for, like you must have encountered in your your experience through at the Church of Santa Monica, where the church has, through the restoration, we have had, like, for example, concerts, we've had exhibitions, we've had, like, even sometimes we had come people coming to pray to the to the weeping cross, and the miraculous weeping cross, at the chapel. And when we see such people coming together, like, we have to allow for everything to happen together, like, allow these, like, not, we cannot exclude anyone. And the biggest challenge is to sort of include everyone in the process of this process of conservation through this adapting to the place, to a new use. And also when you talk about historic buildings, they are built in a particular time period where there was a particular use which came with a certain set configuration of the build space. And when you talk about the configuration of build space, you can see that configuration of build space requires to be respected, okay, in a sense that we have to, like, when we are adapting our new requirements, and new requirements need to respect the historical fabric. They need to also at the same time kind of incorporate our requirements today, like our requirements, like, sometimes they today we think that they are very simple things like electricity, like lighting, or maybe adding washrooms to these kind of areas, these kind of places. Sometimes even, like, for example, firefighting, okay, and even sometimes making these places accessible, like these challenges, we in newer buildings we think, that they are like, they are a given, like they're something that you really require. And then when you bring that requirement into a historic building which was never designed in that manner for these challenges, these kind of, this the level of comfort that we are used to today, or a level of sophistication, maybe, is these things become very challenging. How do we then respect the fabric of the space, along with putting our needs and our requirements within the space, and both really talking about their own time and their own place in this building, so that kind of, how do we separate them, and yet they talk about the same language, and they enhance each other's, kind of, they work together. Yeah, and somebody here in the comments says air conditioning also sometimes.
Yeah.
Totally, I mean, yeah, yeah. This
Yeah.
is like, yeah,
Present
yeah,
day needs air conditioning. There is security, like some one of our friends has also put in a comment as security. We have in Goa, we have, besides these conditions, the weather conditions, especially during the monsoons, is it's the biggest challenge that we face with these heritage monuments. And when I'm talking about these, I'm talking about the ones on the Holy Hill that were built in the 17th century. Yes, they stood the test of time and weather, but suddenly today we find that we don't have, trained people, or there is lack of manpower to go up on the roofs to address those
oh,
pre-monsoon issues. So there are lots of these issues. While we readapt and we try and make the best, provide the best facilities within the limitations, but the structure continues to remain the old structure. So
yeah,
whatever can be done within the limitations are addressed, but I think
yeah,
the challenges still continue, because
yeah,
the people from Goa will know, this year we've had 5 months of incessant rains, and
yeah,
if you have just a regular roof tile over and no false ceiling, then you really face a lot of challenges, especially in churches. With
right.
I face that problem in the Church of Santa Monica all the time. So I
It's
know that
like,
weather is the
uh,
biggest challenge
right, right.
when we are readapting to make use of the building for another purpose. Another challenge, besides security, which is a major issue, and firefighting, which is a major issue, is the accessibility for all our visitors. When these monuments were built, they were built for one purpose, say a choir area. It was originally for the museum, it was a choir area. Now it is a museum. So we have a mezzanine and a ground floor. And how do we
Yeah,
access this besides the stairs? Do we have a lift? Becoming a heritage monument, you don't get those necessary, you
yeah,
don't easily get the necessary approvals, because we come in heritage zones. For
yeah,
any important or not important, also any change in the building has to be really tackled with very carefully, because there are so many procedures in place with the National Monuments Authority.
yeah,
So I think these are the challenges that we continue to face, though we try our best to address all the issues that we can. When our friend here spoke about air conditioning, especially for the objects, I tend to disagree slightly. Air conditioning, maybe not, because all our objects were made at, have survived beautifully. So when you're talking about air conditioning for objects, yeah, our objects have survived beautifully without air conditioning for all these centuries. So introducing air conditioning now would be changing the temperatures that they are used to. So what we would do in museums here in India, especially, we would use dehumidifiers, or we would use, silica crystals, gel, whatever, to take off the excess humidity and not necessarily air condition the whole space. Yeah, I know from the point of view of visitors coming in, it gets a little bit, it's a little bit of a discomfort, but then this is humid India, and we have, we have to take balance between the objects and the visitors. So we try to provide for both the best that we can. Yeah.
Yeah, so I
So,
think is
yeah,
like
go
also
ahead.
that kind of observation you come to with by understanding the requirement over a period of time. Like it is an ongoing understanding, an ongoing process. I think that these kind of things that you'll have come to these conclusions are like observing and studying these objects, or maybe studying the space to to understand how one can really do it over or over a long period of time. It is not like it has been say 28 years of understanding how best one can really put make the museum do the best function within this historic building
Yes.
which you have done now, like it is reset level where one through the understanding that you'll have built up over the years, right? I think that
Yes.
is something noteworthy, and that is something that one can learn from your experience, and that has come through really observing this and through the process of adapting the use, you all have come to that conclusion.
Okay, and so when we come to, the the difficult choices that we have to sometimes make between aesthetics versus new materials to be introduced during this process of readaptive use. If Noah, you can share with us some of the conflicts that we have to face, including the flooring that we encountered, including the flooring, the case of the flooring
Yeah,
in uh,
absolutely.
the Church of Santa Monica. So there
Yes.
again, we wanted to introduce a new material, and we
Yeah.
had we had quite an experience there. But if you can share some of the insights as a conservation architect and what you have
So,
experienced.
so I think at that point in time, it was like, when we were like exploring through the conservation process, like restoring the church, it was more of like, we had this very thick layer that, was there on layer of IPS flooring that was there, Indian patent cement flooring on the church floor, which at that point we had, over its time, maybe it was probably installed somewhere in post liberation, and it was that the flow was giving way, and the whole process of restoration, one needs to see that how can one use new material, like that's what we thought about, and use new material to complement the space within that, within the church, to create that aesthetic, or try to respect the aesthetics of that time, and to give a kind of a very good feeling, during the whole process. But at the same time, when we were, working on that on the floor, we sort of made some small excavation patches of the floor to try to ascertain, whether, what was happening underneath that layer of IPS. And it so happened that when we excavated a small patch, we were lucky to actually find that there was the existing basalt stone floor that was there below the that layer of IPS, but although that basalt floor was there, you can say they had worked upon that floor, like they chipped it to to create that a layer to sort of protect, to hold on, so the cement could like grapple onto that flooring. So when that flooring that was found, the whole, it was all about choices, adaptive reuse is about choices. Like how do you make a choice? Like how do you say that, do we protect that, or how do you take a decision whether, like that stone was in a really bad condition. But when we started opening it up, like we started seeing, okay, there was a kind of a way in which one could really save it. And today it becomes a very important aesthetic, feature within the whole church, that the basalt stone, and uh, yeah, and that, yeah, Kimberly asks whether we have before and after pics. Yes, we do. Documentation is a very important process. Pre-documentation, like pre-documentation before the work is carried out, during the work being carried out, and after, post-documentation also needs to be done. So yeah, it was. I think architect Ketak Nasholkar, when I was working under him. With his guidance, his kind of vision. The stone flooring was sort of opened up, and I think today, if you go there, that stone flooring is something that really gives that place. It makes it that special feeling. And similarly, when you see even if you see the museum, when you're talking about the aesthetics part of it, like, and there was this newer function brought into that space, into the foyer part of the church, which was an additional part of it, where this museum now exists.
Noah, Rita is also here, so
Hi,
just
yeah, hi Rita. Yeah,
whole
Rita,
upgradation project
that's
of the
right.
museum, where where the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation has associated with the museum, and we have jointly prepared this whole upgradation project. And architect Rita from the Gulbenkian Foundation was very instrumental in this whole design plan, along with architect Arminio, to come up with the best possible solutions for the upgradation project while keeping the aesthetic and introducing new materials, but very sensitively.
That's
And
right. Yeah,
to the experience of the choir loft, which is no
yeah,
longer standing, of introducing one element like a
yeah.
viewing platform to give all our visitors an experience of how it must have been in the 17th century for the nuns who would have stood up there on the choir area and participated in the services. So,
Yeah.
as soon as the museum opens, you will get to see what we are talking about when we talk about this viewing platform that was, an initiative, and Rita's brainchild, really, for bringing it on. So aesthetics, new materials,
Yeah,
introducing these new elements or old elements being reintroduced again,
that's right.
but keeping in mind and without taking away anything from the building. That is very
That's
important. Yes, you put it into adaptive reuse,
that's right.
but
Yeah, yeah,
keep the aesthetic of the building as close to its original as possible. I think that's what we aim to do, at least with the museum, and I hope that we can share that kind of information also with other monuments that are trying to adaptively reuse their buildings for other uses, which are which might be for I think it needs to be also for close to the function what it was meant for primarily. So that
yeah,
needs to
yeah.
be, there has to be some connect. You have to tell the story of that period. So the Museum of Krishna being located in the Convent of Santa Monica, being located here, it tells you a lot, the history of the place. It tells you about Christian art. This is, I think, the perfect setting for a museum of this kind.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you have anything
Yeah.
else not to say on this point, or we
So
can.
that thing about appropriateness, I totally agree with you. Like appropriateness is something that we have to kind of work around to like develop that. How do we add this appropriate use, and that appropriateness, like, to generate that kind of scheme, takes a lot of effort, and that's what you can see through the renovation of the museum space, and the way architect Rita has used all the materials and all, and through that, you're telling a story of what was there, like you're trying to recreate that story, not like doing it in its entirety, because the cloister would have encompassed the entire the floor, on in the museum. But
Mhm.
you're sort of just in a very a short gesture, you're trying to create that, giving people that experience of that. So you're trying to give them that connection with what might have been,
Yes.
and also in terms of the material, you're trying to say that this is a new narrative. It's not the what was the old one. It is a new insert, which in its material, kind of medium, it kind of really breaks the kind of thing, and it gives the old structure its respect, yeah, and the new also has its own place in that, so they don't really sort of are clash with each other. They are kind of, they coexist, beautifully coexist, and that's something that a good adaptive reuse project will do. Like both the timelines coexist beautifully, and they complement each other, and that is something, as as a custodian or as an architect or as a viewer, we have to appreciate these things, and that is something as adaptive reuse projects should aspire for. Yeah.
Hmm. And coming to the economics of adaptive reuse, yeah,
Yeah.
we sometimes wonder, and people also say, when we ask for funding as well,
Yeah.
you're putting in a lot of money into an old structure. How,
Yeah.
from the point of view of
That's right. It's a
economics,
lot of,
does
yeah,
it work? Yeah.
yeah, a lot of money there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
the economic part of it, the challenge for to how do you rationalize and conservation adaptive reuse project like this, and how do you make it viable, I think in the sense that, many times when we talk about economics, we directly talk about, the value that the space gives to the users. Like it's a direct relationship that we talk about. If you put X amount of money, X amount of return you will get, but many a times the return may not be directly from the building, or it might take much longer time for you to really recover that money. But what I think is phenomenal is that how do these adaptive reuse projects give opportunities to a much larger section of people, a much larger section of communities to really that benefit from these projects. For example, like we talk about the museum being there, or the Holy Hill being this very interesting kind of heritage precinct. You get a lot of people benefit from tourism. A lot of people benefit from some businesses, little small businesses. There are some people who work within these places. Like there is job employment created. There is sometimes like for example the educational experiences, like created within this. Like for me, like the value that I have gotten from the Holy Hill and this monuments is beyond the that it sort of is like almost like an educational experience to me. Like it has been something that has taught me a lot of things, over the time that I've encountered these places, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who have benefited, not just the custodians of the buildings themselves, but also the people who have interacted with these buildings, who have been visiting these places. They have gotten a lot more than that that value that you say is in terms of like that monetary gain is just beyond that, like the intangible thing. Like you cannot really put a kind of
true.
a value onto that.
Intangible. We
Yeah.
can't, see a direct profit in investing in the adaptive use of an old heritage structure. I mean, a museum or any institution can have a new building with
That's
specific
right.
needs addressed to, because you have security, air conditioning, and a lot of other things that can be addressed. But the value of having an institution, an organization, or any of these cultural things, organizations in a heritage building just adds so much more value to the building, to the whole experience of being there, and to the community at large. Like you said, it can become an economically viable solution for so many. From the tourism point of view, you can have a beautiful cafe in these
Yeah.
setups. You can have like continue to have the heritage walks that we've been doing, and so many
Oh yeah.
others who have now joined us, like
Yeah.
so many others, like Make It Happen, Soul Traveling, and they're doing such an excellent job of promoting all these places that were earlier not known.
Yeah.
Because of the heritage walks, they are also economically viable now, and concerts. when these buildings were made, they were made at a particular time. The aesthetic was different. Especially I'm talking about churches. The acoustics in a church cannot be compared
Yeah,
to a regular auditorium. And over the last few years, you've been seeing concerts happening, performances in these churches on the Holy Hill, also at the Capella du Monte, which have attracted a lot of interest, lots of international, visitors who come specifically for these kind of performances, locals who have coming again, so you get a repeat audience to these places, which
right.
earlier you got only once a year. People used to come to Old Goa just for the pilgrimage to the St. Francis Xavier. But now
Yeah,
you have repeat audiences coming again, visiting these places. Why? Because they have been there's an adaptive reuse. There is a museum to see. There is a
yeah,
concert
yeah,
performance happening in the church. So it's bringing people back here. And thanks for that comment. You're
yeah.
bringing repeat audiences, and it's creating Holy Hill and Old Goa. I'll talk specifically of the Holy Hill
That,
very selfishly, because I want this place to become a very cultural hub. Whether it's concerts, heritage walks, art exhibitions. We've had in the past several temporary art exhibitions here on the Holy Hill, and we hope to continue promoting this space as a cultural space. And that is all possible only because we've been able to adapt, and use these buildings. And I hope we can continue doing all the work that we are doing, along with collaborations and associations with our various partners.
yeah.
So, Noah, there have been questions, but I think we've been addressing
Yeah,
them,
yeah. I think
through
Sami
the.
talked about skill building, and that skill building part of it, is we have seen numerous, uh, works of restoration of art objects, and we have a lot of conservators who have come to the museum because of that, the use that has come there, and you were able to sort of you were able to sort of facilitate that for a lot of people, and I was also part of one of those workshops that you all had on the porches of the Santa Monica. It's very fascinating. It was like just opened up this new area of for me, and it was very insightful. And talking about the acoustics also in the churches, I think beyond the acoustics, I'm sure all the music lovers will also appreciate that the context with these buildings give to that music. It is like you're playing sacred music within a place with a sacred space with sacred proportions, with artwork, craft all around you, and it really gives you that, it brings you in that sort of mood to enjoy that music, and then that is something that that is sort of I think something that you cannot like put a price on, and that is something that is really valuable. It is our heritage in the end of the day.
All right. I think Kimberly here has a question. No, you might be the best person to answer this.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think when we talk about houses, like private house owners now, you have various options. Like one could be to maybe while adapting the new functions and new requirements, one can also look at ways to also kind of enable a better use of these houses, because sometimes you had these very big rooms and in these houses, private houses, heritage houses, where the kind of spaces were today now we need a lot of functions like toilets and all of these services going in kitchens, and all of those things. And that is fine. We adding these sort of functions sometimes can bring about a lot of, through the process of adaptive use, we can look at how to restructure the spaces also and give, maybe if there were in the old house there was maybe 2 bedrooms, now we can maybe look at maybe adding another one by the way we start dividing the space, structuring it, that is one option. One can we can maximize the kind of possibility of the space, and it becomes more efficient, and then with this, when you restore and you add these these services, utilities, and all. One can also has a lot of options. You can look at options of like putting up your house on Airbnb, or maybe for such rental options that you have. You can maybe for short homestays options. These options are very useful where the owner can still function within the house, and you can like entertain people with tourists, and who appreciate the houses, and value them, and you can generate some income from them. And also there was this very interesting use where we had done a restoration for a client in Moira, okay, where her house she uses it for photo shoots and all, so it's a very interesting kind of a way where one can still retain the ownership of the house, but use it in a very different manner. Very aesthetics start becoming useful. Otherwise, many times the aesthetics are, they become a lot, they're quite challenging to maintain, but here the aesthetics start becoming like settings for pre-wedding.
New generation happens.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating that one can generate very interesting ideas for such cases. So there are. I hope, Kimberly, I have addressed your question and done justice to it, because I mean the possibilities are numerous. I mean, we've seen a lot of boutique hotels, restaurants coming in these kind of spaces, and they become fascinating, and the product that you sell or you create, and gives that the space adds the little extra value to these things, and that is something that you cannot get with or it's very difficult to get with our new architecture. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think with this we would like to conclude,
Yeah.
our session for today. But if you still have, if any one of you have any questions, we can still. I think we still have 5 minutes. Or if there is a message, Noah, that you would like to give for people where it's connected to adaptive reuse. I mean, for us at MoCA, we have, we are a perfect example of being.
That's right.
We are using a space which is has been reused, in a beautiful way, and
Yeah.
we are just really anxiously awaiting to reopen, so that all of you can come and see the work the work and the effort that has been put into this application project.
Yeah.
But
Marcel,
Noah, any message that you would like to give?
yeah, I would like to tell everyone here, that the MoCA is, I think, one of the most, I think, I think one of the most beautiful spaces, I think, in Goa. It's my favorite place, I think, and I would like everyone to visit, okay, because I think there is a treasure, I think, and if you've not visited it, I think that's you're going to miss something there. Okay, and the new museum is beautiful. I mean, congrats to Architect Rita, Architect Arminio Ribeiro, and the MoCA team for an excellent execution of this project, which I think would really be a precedent for other cases. My request to a lot of communities to really take charge of your heritage. Okay, take charge and look at how the buildings in your vicinity could be put to excellent uses. Where you can bring people together, and you all can it can talk about your community, as you can fulfill your community aspirations through these fascinating historic buildings. Yeah, and
So I think,
yeah.
you can, sorry, if
Tell me.
I can just interrupt. So here
Yeah.
I'd like to say, if any of you would like to share, any buildings which are around you, around your neighborhood, that have been, put into readaptive use. We would love to hear your story, and share with us your images, so that we can share them as well on our page, where adaptive reuse has been successfully done. And no, I think this is the last question for you from Rutva, which says, when can we have your heritage walks of the Holy Hill again? So over to you.
I think this is a kind of a very difficult one to say, but I mean, if we can maintain the protocols that have been put in place, I don't see why we can't have a walk, because I truly believe that in a time like this, heritage and the message that it gives us, it can really instill hope. Like heritage can really give the message of heritage can really instill hope in people. in a gloomy time like this. So I think that we can do it as long as we sort of are able to work within these things, maybe smaller groups,
Protocols and
and
procedures in place. Yes, I
yeah,
think
with the
we
in
will
place.
soon be able to coordinate with you and announce a heritage walk. And I think everybody will be very eager. Everyone, at least here in Goa, will be eager to join you on the heritage walk of the Holy
Yeah.
Hill.
I
So
too
with
am very eager, to meet a lot of people, because I must tell everyone here that I've met really fascinating people through the walks that I've conducted, and I'm sure a lot of them are here, in the audience. And yeah, it has been a blessing, I think, that to have been able to do this, and I think even I tell you, actually I met Natasha through the walk, in fact,
yeah, so
and
we
this this
the heritage walk on of Old
yes,
Goa, but on the Holy Hills. So that's how we've started our interaction, and the journey has been really long with Noah becoming a friend of the museum and working along with us on so many various projects. So thank you, Noah. Thank you, everyone. You'll have been really patient through our technical glitches today, and and it being our first Insta Live, I think you can just pardon us for any technical glitches from our end, but hopefully we'll come back better for the next one. But this has been a great first Insta
yeah,
Live.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great point. I think it's also great to have sometimes these things, where you're understanding the kind of nuances of doing these things. And it has been a pleasure, Natasha. Thank you so much for having me. And it was
Teams on this Insta Live session and helping us. I'm not as
that's it.
technical who she is. So thanks,
Yeah,
Ritwa.
Rutwa. Thanks, Rutwa, as well. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she's the brains behind these things, and we are we are totally learning from all of these things.
Thank you so much, everyone. See you next time, soon, hopefully.
Yeah, soon, hopefully. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. I hope we will be able to interact with you at maybe the Museum of Christian Art or Holy Hill at any point in time. I hope you can always send us a message, and we can definitely love to really interact with you all. And we can it's always good to really share knowledge, and we share knowledge is the way we learn more.
Yeah.
We make more connections, friends, and that's way we kind of share our love for heritage, and that's I think,
Yeah.
and I feel that this platform, I think, like Insta Live is actually breaking those barriers for us, because to be honest, like I was very kind of, in a sense, very low tech for that matter. I'm a very low tech person. I prefer like talking to people one on one, and that's how the walks were
That's
done.
why we waited for this long, Noah, but finally we did manage to come live on social media. And once again, we'll have to wrap it up. We just have a few seconds before it gets disconnected. So thank you once again, everyone. Bye,
Everyone,
Noah. See you
bye.
soon. Bye. Stay safe,
Bye bye.
everyone.
Stay safe, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.